the cure we prayed for. It struck fast. One day, the hospitals were full of flu cases. The next, people collapsed in the streets, clutching their chests, gasping like fish out of water. The news called it the Great Valerian Heart Sickness. Hearts gave out, lungs filled with fluid. There was no warning, no known origin. The world panicked. Then came the help. They arrived in ships that hovered silently above every major capital. Sleek, silver vessels that shimmered like molten glass. From them stepped the Valerians, tall, serene, almost human. Their eyes glowed faintly violet, their voices calm. Dr. Eris and Dr. Kale, the official envoys, introduced themselves as representatives of the Galactic Medical Consortium, offering an immediate cure for the disease devastating Earth. We believed them. We had to. The United Nations declared a planetary emergency. Governments dropped borders and signed off on the Valerian Medical Accord within days. Desperation has a way of making deals feel necessary. The aliens constructed pristine white clinics, glowing like temples in a sea of chaos. One by one, patients were transferred. One by one, they either got better or disappeared. I watched it unfold from the sidelines. My name is Dr. Lena Petrova. Once a biomedical researcher focused on cardiopulmonary tissue regeneration, I had been part of a team working on a promising cure for early heart failure. But when the sickness hit, human science wasn't fast enough. We were dismissed. Let the Valerians handle it, they said. They've cured worse. I wanted to believe that. God, I tried. But something wasn't right. Some patients improved, yes. Remarkably fast, even. But others just vanished. No funerals. No remains. Their names quietly removed from registries. Their families silenced with vague updates. Transferred to advanced treatment sectors. No locations, no follow-ups. Too clean. Too quiet. And then Ben Carter got sick. Ben had been my friend since university. An investigative journalist with a sharp wit and sharper instincts. He called me the night he felt the first symptoms. I'll never forget how he sounded. Breathless but calm. They got me, Lena. Took longer than I thought. But it's in me. I told him to stay put. I begged him to come to the old hospital wing, where I still had access. But the next day, Valerian operatives in white coats escorted him to their central clinic downtown. His status was listed as Tier 3 candidate. High compatibility. That phrase sent a chill through me. Since when did medicine need compatibility rankings? Then came his message. Just a single encrypted line sent through an old secure channel we used back when we shared a side project on bioenergetic feedback loops. Lena, it's not what they say. Watching, listening, but energy wrong. Remember your theory. Not healing. I stared at that line for hours. Remember your theory. He meant the project that got shelved right before the Valerians arrived. My theory about cellular resonance patterns and how energy fields could accelerate organ degradation in control conditions. It had applications in both healing and destruction. But nobody wanted to hear about risk when aliens were handing out miracles. Now I couldn't ignore it. Ben's words, the vanishing patients, the strange compatibility notes. It all added up to one terrible thought. What if this wasn't medicine? What if we were being used, studied? I began pulling records. Quietly, carefully. Some of the older hospitals hadn't been fully integrated into the Valerian network, and through backdoors and archive data, I accessed old patient lists. Cross-referenced names. 73 individuals had been transferred to Valerian care from just one city in the past month. Only 11 had returned. No one asked why. Because people didn't want the truth. They wanted to believe. I watched as the world praised the Valerians. I watched leaders shake hands with Dr. Eris and give him medals. I watched humanity surrender its scientific sovereignty in the name of survival. And I thought of Ben, alone in that sleek white building with its soundless halls and glass walls. He'd always been skeptical. He wouldn't go quietly. Maybe he'd seen something. Or maybe he was something valuable. That's when I knew I had to find out what was really going on. Not just for Ben, not just for science, but for all of us. Because the more I looked at the facts, the more I realized we weren't being cured. We were being chosen. Buried signals. Ben's message played on a loop in my mind. Not what they say, watching, listening. Energy wrong. I hadn't heard from him in 4 days. Every time I tried to access his file through the Valerian Clinic portal, I got a red patient secure. No further access authorized notice. Locked out. The clinic staff gave vague answers when I called. He's stable. No updates are available. But I knew how to dig deeper. I had to. I owed him that much. I spent the next day bouncing through old academic backdoors, hunting for digital traces of Valerian data on black market networks, secure forums, encrypted archives. Most scientists had moved on, silenced by praise or fear. But a few of us were still listening. I contacted Nico, a former systems analyst who'd been fired after questioning how Valerian medical drones accessed civilian biometric data. Now he lived off-grid, running illegal diagnostics out of a buried data node. We met in the basement of an abandoned metro station, the kind no one dared enter anymore. "I thought you were done," he said, eyeing me through cracked glasses. I was, until Ben Carter disappeared. He whistled. "That guy pokes too many nests. So what are you after?" "Clinic logs, shuttle data, patient flow, anything that proves they're not healing people, they're selecting them." Nico looked at me for a long time, then nodded. Hours later, I stared at a glowing display of data that shouldn't exist, flight paths of Valerian medical shuttles. But instead of major hospitals or recovery centers, most flights terminated in unmapped regions. Open deserts, old military bunkers, decommissioned observatories. Places with no reason to host advanced alien technology. Ben had always said, "When people stop asking questions, that's when you know you should." My hand shook as I traced the path of one particular shuttle, tag VX 441. It left the clinic 3 days ago, the same day Ben vanished from his room. The ship made a low-orbit arc before descending into the northern tundra. The tag labeled the destination Biostasis 9. I'd never seen it on any medical list. A dead zone. I zoomed in on satellite imagery. The location appeared empty, just white plains. But thermal scans showed energy surges, rising and falling every few hours. Like a pulse. Artificial. Monitored. Hidden. I ran a background search on Biostasis 9. Nothing in official databases. But an old GA surveillance leak from years ago mentioned a biological testing facility used during the early stages of Earth's entry into the Galactic Alliance. Repurposed, scrubbed from maps. Ben was there. I needed confirmation, and Ben gave it to me. That night, I received a second encrypted message, bouncing through 4 servers before it reached my wrist pad. Audio only. Weak, distorted. "Lena here. Bio 9. Not clinic. Machines everywhere. Lights never go off. No windows. They scan us. Not healing. Mapping. Energy fields. Something in the walls. I don't know how long I have. Trust no one." I sat in silence, jaw clenched, heart aching. His voice was slurred, strained, but his mind was clear. He hadn't given up. I downloaded the data packet he'd attached. Most of it was corrupted, but one file survived, a low-res image. Blurry, but unmistakable. A row of people lying in glass pods, tubes running from their chests, fluid rising and falling in perfect rhythm. Each pod bore a glowing symbol in the Valerian script. I had it translated. "Harvest ready." A cold rage settled in my gut. It explained everything. The rapid recoveries, the missing patients, the compatibility notes. They weren't curing the disease. They were managing it, containing it just enough to keep organs alive, long enough for extraction. This wasn't medicine. This was processing. I sat back, overwhelmed. The weight of the truth pressed down like gravity. We had handed over control of our dying planet to beings who looked like saviors, and they were using us like cattle. Efficient, silent, clean. Ben's voice echoed in my ears. Not what they say. I stared at the shuttle logs, still active. Another was set to leave in 4 hours. Same destination, Biostasis 9. More patients. More silent disappearances. I had to get inside. I had to find Ben. And I had to expose all of it before Earth forgot it was ever human. The farm. The shuttle door sealed behind me with a hiss. I sat alone, surrounded by smooth, white panels that reflected the sterile blue light above. No windows. No crew. Just the low hum of propulsion and the soft chime of a heartbeat monitor pulsing overhead. Not mine. It played on loop, probably to soothe patients. But it chilled me. I wasn't a patient. I was a spy, and I was running out of time. I had forged the identity of a Tier 2 compatibility candidate, using hack clearance from a Valerian intake server Nico helped crack. The biometric scanner took just long enough to make my pulse spike before the door slid open and welcomed me in. I kept my head down, didn't speak, didn't flinch. If I hesitated, they'd notice. They always noticed. Destination, Biostasis 9. The shuttle descended in silence. No announcement, no flashing signs, just a moment of stillness, followed by the sound of docking clamps and the soft hiss of depressurization. The door opened to cold air and quiet dread. A narrow corridor stretched out before me. Walls polished to a blinding white, floors lined with embedded lights that pulsed softly like a living thing. Cameras blinked behind glass domes overhead. Two Valerian technicians stood at a console. They glanced at me, then waved me forward with the same emotionless professionalism I'd seen in every interview they gave. "You'll be escorted to diagnostics," one said in accented English. "Your organ viability profile is exceptional." The words hit like a slap. They didn't say health. They didn't say recovery. Just viability. I followed silently. The hallway opened into a larger chamber. That's when I saw it. The processing floor. Dozens of transparent pods lined the room like museum displays, each one holding a human body suspended in viscous blue fluid. Some were awake, eyes wide, mouths moving in slow horror. Others were still, too still. Tubes snaked into their chests, into their necks. Above each pod, holographic glyphs flickered. Organ condition, extraction schedule, compatibility ratings. I stopped breathing. They were alive. They were aware. This wasn't a morgue. It was a farm. The farm. The air smelled like antiseptic and ozone. Machines buzzed. A low vibration hummed through the floor. It was a rhythm, like a pulse, artificial, regulated. I scanned for Ben. There were too many. Faces bloated, limbs restrained. My knees weakened, but I forced myself to move. I spotted a side terminal. Unmanned, flickering. I rushed to it, hands shaking. Nico had prepared a bypass key embedded in my wrist pad. I connected it and prayed it would work. The screen blinked. Unlocked. Patient logs scrolled across the display. Hundreds of names. Most marked processed. A few in stasis. Then one. Carter Benjamin. Tier 3. Priority genome profile. Viability maximum. Extraction schedule imminent. My stomach dropped. I found a pod number. R17. I sprinted down the aisle, past the silent rows of human bodies turned into parts. R15. R16. R17. There he was. Ben. Eyes closed. A mask over his face. Tubes running into his arms, chest, spine. Monitors flashing in Valerian script. His vitals were stable, but just barely. I banged on the glass. "Ben, it's me, it's Lena." No response. Sedated. Maybe worse. I hit the emergency release. Nothing. Security override required. I opened the toolkit hidden inside my bag. Just a compact neural disruptor Nico risked his life to build. It had one shot, and it wasn't meant to be used on a whole system. But I didn't care. I jammed it into the terminal port and fired. Sparks burst from the console. The chamber lights flickered. For a second, the hum faltered. The rhythm stopped. The pod's locks disengaged with a hiss. Fluid drained. The mask lifted. Ben's body slumped forward. I caught him. He coughed violently, eyes fluttering open. "Lena," he whispered. "Told you, wasn't what they said." Tears stung my eyes. "We're getting out. Now." But the alarm started. A harsh, metallic wail echoed through the hall. The Valerians were coming. I triggered the final piece, the data dump. Every file I'd copied, every scan, every name, every image, uploaded straight to the Galactic Authority Network. A public stream. Irrefutable evidence of what this place really was. Ben leaned on me as we staggered toward the service exit. Doors slammed behind us. Guards approached, shouting commands in their strange language. But it was too late. Outside, the sky burned with unfamiliar ships descending fast. Galactic Authority vessels. Someone had heard us. Someone had listened. And the farm, the Valerian lie, was no longer a secret. Reckoning. The sky above Biostasis 9 was no longer silent. It burned. Ships from the Galactic Authority hovered in a perfect perimeter. Sleek, metallic vessels, their lights pulsing like stars held just overhead. Their presence wasn't subtle. It was a warning. The illusion was over. The harvest was exposed. Inside the shattered facility, Klaxon screamed and Valerian personnel scrambled. The clinical cold control they once held unraveled in an instant. And in the center of it all, I held Ben upright as we moved, limping, staggering, down a ruined corridor of shattered glass and broken wires. He leaned heavily on me, still weak from sedation, but awake now. Alert, angry. You sent it, he rasped. Every file, every patient. They can't deny it anymore. Good, he said, coughing. Then we finished this. Behind us, the pod chambers flickered in and out of power. Dozens of other humans, survivors, now stirred in the wreckage of their capsules, their bodies weakened but alive. Guards who once stood silent now begged to be heard by authority officers armed with stun rifles and genetic scanners. And ahead of us stood Dr. Eris, flanked by 2 Valerian guards, calm even as the world collapsed around him. Petrova, he said, voice sharp and clinical. You've interrupted vital interspecies work. Ben shifted, growling. You mean your organ factory? Eris didn't blink. Our species is dying. We chose efficiency over extinction. You were a viable supply. We compensated you with false hope. I don't regret the exchange. My fist clenched. You engineered the Valerian heart sickness. You infected millions. It was painless, Eris replied. Clean. Regulated. Your race produces tissue of rare compatibility. We cultivated only the best. I stepped forward. You cultivated us like livestock. The 2 guards raised their weapons, but they didn't fire. Behind them, authority enforcers arrived, towering, armored beings from across the galaxy. One scanned Eris. The glyphs turned red. Subject confirmed. Class 7 Bioviolator. Illegal genomic engineering. Violation of Accords 3, 11, and 19. Dr. Eris frowned, the first crack in his expression. Dr. Kale, his assistant, was already in custody nearby, arms bound, trembling. The calm veneer of scientific superiority peeled away as galactic officers confiscated drives, dismantled terminals, and began removing the remaining pods. For the first time, the Valerians looked small. We gave your world a chance, Eris muttered. No, I said, my voice low but steady. You gave us a cage. As he was dragged away, I turned to Ben. He sagged in my arms but managed a crooked smile. Glad you kept your bad habit of saving the world, he said, wincing. One crisis at a time. I helped him outside. The cold air hit us like a baptism. Overhead, the authorities' relay station broadcast our data across dozens of networks. News feeds, science forums, civilian alerts. Every corner of the Galactic Alliance would see the truth. The headline that blinked across the stream burned into my eyes. Valerian Medical Assistance Program. Global Harvest Operation uncovered. We were no longer victims. We were witnesses. In the days that followed, Earth roared with the fury of revelation. Mass protests shut down Valerian embassies. The cure they gave us, now pulled from shelves, had never truly been a cure. It was a stabilizer designed to keep organs ripe, safe for extraction. The heart failures? Just the test group. The real harvest had always been scheduled. The disease still remained. But now we fought it on our terms, with real doctors, real science, real ethics. The Galactic Authority declared a full quarantine on Valerian biomedical tech. Reparations were negotiated, most of them meaningless to the families who had already lost loved ones. But truth has a strange way of healing wounds you didn't know were festering. As for me, I didn't sleep for 3 days after he got home. I kept watching the feeds, checking Ben's vitals, replaying the sound of Eris's voice. But eventually, the silence came, not the cold kind that chokes, but the quiet that settles after a storm. The quiet that says, "You survived." Ben stayed with me during recovery. We sat on rooftops at night, watching the stars, knowing now how many of them held dark secrets. "They called us a resource," he said once. "You made us human again." "We never stopped being human," I replied. "We just had to remind the galaxy what that meant."